To do your provisional cast on, you are going to need first to leave a tail, make a loop, stick the yarn through the loop, and then pull it tight, not too tight. This is your slip knot. Now you take your two circular needles. I'm using two colors here so you can see what I'm doing. You put both needles through the slip knot and you pull the slip knot snug. You don't want it to be really tight. You want it to be able to slide on the needles. You take your tail and you hold it in your hand. Your thumb and forefinger are going to pinch whatever you're working with. Your waste yarn goes also in your hand. Okay, to do a provisional cast on, your working yarn is going to go behind, over, and over the waste yarn. So again, we go behind the waste yarn, over the needle, and then over the waste yarn. Okay, for this sample I have 10 stitches. You can wrap this a few times to make sure that it doesn't come undone. You can always unwrap it later. You can tie the two browned ends together, your waste yarn, so it doesn't come undone. However you want to do it, whatever feels good to you. Now we want to slide out one needle. I'm going to slide the pink needle out, and we're going to set this up for working in the round. To do that, you're going to turn your needle so you can hold it in your left hand, and then you're going to take and slide the stitches 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put the two needles together, slide it to the other end of your work, turn the needles around, and now we have to join this side. You want to make sure that all of your yarn is facing in the right one direction. It's not twisted. Now you're going to take the yarn off of the pink needle, this last stitch, and you're going to just move it over to the green needle. And then you're going to take this stitch on the green needle that was the last stitch, put it over the one you just moved, and then onto the pink needle. So you can see now that they are joined. Now to knit, we only want to work with one needle, never both colors at the same time. Move the pink needle out of the way, and I knit continental. You can do it right-handed as well. This is my preference. We're going to find our working yarn, over the first finger, under the next two, and then over the pinky. This keeps tension. To knit, you go through the first loop on the yarn, stick your needle through the loop and behind the left needle. Pick up the yarn, pull it through the loop, and then slide that first stitch off the needle. Stick the needle through the loop, behind the other needle, pick up the next stitch, pull it through, slide it off the needle. When you get to the last stitch, knit it just like all the others, only now we're done with the green needle. I'm going to turn the work, and now we're going to start knitting with just the pink needle. So I'm going to move the pink needle down. I'm going to find my working yarn. Other end of the pink needle. I'm having trouble here. And then just knit like you did before. The first row is always going to be the hardest. Okay, you only want to work about 10 inches measured from the side. So from our cast on edge, which is over here, to here, should be 10 inches. We're going to graft, and I figured it'd be easier if you could see it with a contrasting color rather than working with the blue yarn. So we're going to do something called the Kitchener stitch. Now normally on a Kitchener stitch you would have the wrong sides together. But on our mitten, and on our mitten here, when we graft the inside loop, when we graft the inside loop here, we actually have the right sides together. So we're going to make it a little differently. So there's one setup stitch. First of all, you want to have both pieces here. Remember, we slipped our provisional provisional cast on, half of it onto a needle, and then this would be the top half of our mitten. Okay, to do this we have to do a setup stitch. So the first thing we want to do is insert the needle as if to knit. If I can get it through the right stitch. Okay. Oops. Stitch came loose. And then we're going to do the back needle and insert this as if to purl, and leave that on as well. Okay, that is your setup stitch. Now we're going to do the actual Kitchener stitch. So we want to insert the needle as if to purl, and then slide that off the needle. And then we take the next stitch and we insert the needle as if to purl. We pull the yarn through and then we leave the yarn there. Then we go to the first stitch in the back needle and we insert the needle as if to knit, and we pull it through and then slide this one off the needle, and then we insert as if to purl. Okay, now because this is loose here, it's not wanting to play fun. But you don't want to pull these stitches too tight. You're going to do about 3 or 4 stitches, and then you can go through with your needle and you can pull on it and tighten it up so that the stitches across here will match the stitches in your knitting. Okay, so this is a 4-step process. Let's look at another stitch. So again, we're going to insert here as if to purl, and then we're going to slide that off our needle. That's step 1. Step 2 is to insert our needle as if to knit. And then we leave this on the needle. Now we go to the back needle. Step 3 is to insert as if to knit. And we pull that through and then slide it off the needle. And then insert as if to purl. Alright, and then you just continue this 4-step process all the way down till you've got all the stitches off of this needle. Okay, so I've got rid of quite a bit of excess yarn. I trimmed the piece that had the needle on it. I left a little tail so that I can weave it in. I trimmed the other side where the skein was, which I didn't really need the whole skein attached. So that is now a loose end. We're going to get rid of this white yarn, and the needle that, where'd it go? The needle that we were doing the Kitchener stitch with, this was one of our original circular needles, so I know it's the right size. And now we just need, let's see, where's the shortest end? It's probably over here. So now we're just going to do kind of like we did before, where we stick the needle through here and we're going to pull out the white one. And just like before, we go. So just like before, we're just going to take and do 1 stitch at a time. Move all the stitches from our waste yarn, our holding yarn, to our now working needle. Okay, now you can kind of see, now that it's safely on 2 needles, how this is going to work. So you can put your hand in, and this is where you put your can, or your bottle of beer. We are going to sew up a bunch of stuff. So okay, I have knitted up the hand, so you can see my hand go in. And I made it a little big because it's supposed to be fur guy. So it goes up. Now we're going to start the cuff. And there's a trick to it, not a bad trick, but so I have needles here that are a size smaller. You would use a size or 2 smaller than your working needles for the cuff, because we want the cuff to kind of hug the wrist. And we're going to do ribbing, because the ribbing will give it that elasticity that it needs to go over the hand and then hold it snug on the arm. Okay, I'm going to teach you how to purl. So purl is pretty much a backwards knit, and we're going to need the purl to make the cuff. So to start, you hold your yarn just like you always do. But to knit, so if you're knitting, you notice that the working yarn is behind the needle, and you take your left needle and you're going through the loop behind the first stitch, and you wrap it around and you pull it through. This is what you've been doing this whole time. That's a knit stitch. But to purl, you move your working yarn in front of your needle. Your left needle goes under the working yarn, through the loop, you wrap around and you pull through. And you can see here that there's another loop on here, and we just pull that stitch off our needle. So again, you keep your working yarn in front and you go through the front, pick it up. My tension is off. Pick it up and then pull it off the needle. And you can see the finished result here. This is our mitten. I did the knit 2, purl 2, and it's, you know, a little stretchier so that you can put your hand in it. Okay, to bind off, we're going to bind off in the pattern. That means we want to follow with the bind off edge the knit and the purl. And you want to bind off loosely, or this edge here will be really tight and it won't stretch, which kind of defeats the purpose. Okay, so to bind off, you're going to start, because we started with the knit, we're going to start with 2 knit stitches, or if you're doing 1 and 1, you do it differently. So we're going to start with a knit and pull that through, and then we're going to do another knit and pull that through. Okay, that's our setup for our bind off. Now we're going to take this back stitch, here's your front stitch, here's your back stitch. We're going to pull it up and off the needle. We're pulling it basically over the front stitch. Now the next 2 stitches are a purl. So we're going to knit, or actually we're going to just purl a stitch like we normally would. Then we're going to take our back stitch, slide it over the first stitch, and we're done. And we're going to do another purl stitch that way because we've done 2 purl stitches on our mitten. Okay, and then you just slide this up and over. And now the next 2 are going to be knit stitches. So we do it just like we normally do. We knit and then slide the back stitch up and over. And what you end up with is a really nice, looks like a little chain here, but because we followed the pattern, it will look really nice on the edge of our cuff. Okay, to make the little round part that's going to go around this part of our glove, we need to do a different kind of a cast on. This is called a pinch hole cast on. So you want to start by having the tail in your right hand, and you're going to use the 2 fingers on your left hand. We're going to make an X. We're going to go over this way and then under and make your X. Now we're going to take our needle, and we want to hold the yarn here with our last 2 fingers. This is our working yarn. This is the one that we're always going to be working with. So to start, you insert your needle kind of backwards so that you can twist it around the needle. And then you bring it down between your fingers and then behind that lower leg of the X. And now you bring it back up through your fingers. You can see there's 2 stitches on here. We need a total of 8. So there's 2. Okay, now we go and we pick up the stitch again. Oops, wrong one. Pick up the stitch, go down through our fingers, behind that leg, and then pick it up and bring it up again. So that's 4 stitches. Down, pick it up, go down between the fingers, pick it up, and up through the fingers. That's 6. And we'll do it one more time to make 8 stitches. Now we have 8 stitches on our needle. Okay, now when we take our fingers out, we have a loop, and we just pull the tail tight, and that will tighten up the stitches on the needle. Now, just like working in the round, because we're making something round, we're going to slide 4 stitches onto a second circular needle. And the pattern is below. I'm going to show you how to get it set up and then do an increase so that you can do the rest. Now again, we're only going to work with one needle. I'm going to move this to the center, and since my yarn tail is coming, let's see, off of this piece of yarn, I'm going to do this here. And I also need a stitch marker. Now I use a piece of yarn that's tied. They actually sell like little safety pins and all kinds of cute little things. So our first round is our setup. This is row 1, if you're looking at the pattern. And we're going to knit just like we always do, or like we have been. So we're going to knit these 8 stitches. Okay, there's the first 4. We turn the work, and we knit the next 8 stitches. Or next 4 stitches, sorry. Okay, now we want to increase every single stitch. And there's many ways to do an increase. We're going to do what's called knit front back, KFB. And the reason I'm doing it this way is it's just easy to show. You can do a yarn over, which creates a hole, which can look like lace. There's other increase stitches, but we're just going to do this one because it's simple. You can do multiple ones, but because it's on a beer mitt, people probably aren't really going to look at it. So first we're going to knit, but we're not going to slide that stitch off our needle. And then we're going to go into the back of our loop. So, and then wrap the yarn around and pull it through. Okay, I'll do it again one more time. So we stick the needle through just as if we were going to knit, but we keep that stitch on the needle. That was the front, knit front. Now we're going to take this needle behind, stick it back through the back of this the loop here, wrap the yarn around, and then bring it through the loop. So now you can see that I've created 2 stitches for every stitch that's on this needle. So you're going to have 8 stitches on each needle for a total of 16 stitches. There's always one that doesn't want to work. Okay, so there's our 8 stitches. And you just continue on this other needle, and then you just follow the pattern. You're going to knit the next 2 rounds. So at the start of your row, because this is the first needle, when you first make your first stitch, you're going to place a stitch marker on here. You have to knit your first stitch, otherwise this falls off. But that way you know that this is the beginning of the row. Because this tail that's here is in the middle, is in the center, and it's going to stay there. So you're not going to be able to tell unless you use different colored needles. So that is how we're going to do the round. Okay, I've done the whole circle. All I have left is this one stitch. But instead of leaving a little tail, I'm going to use the leftover yarn to stitch around this whole piece. You can see why it doesn't want to lay flat. I'm going to stitch around this whole piece with the yarn that I pull through this last stitch. So I'm going to want a good amount of yarn, but not longer than what my arms can endure. Okay, so I'm going to cut it here, and hopefully that should be more than enough to work around. So I am going to go I'm going to get this, I'm going to finish this loop so I don't pull it out and undo everything. There, now that loop is finished. And then if you end up with a small hole in the middle, again, you just pull on the tail. Now the tail can get tucked up into here, and then you weave it on the wrong side. This is the purl side. But I'm going to block it, I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then we're going to sew it onto the needle. Okay, and here's the finished mitt. You can see how it's sewn on the bottom. I'll probably do this a little differently next time, and you put your drink right in there, and with your hand in here, it can keep your drink cold, your hand warm, especially when you're sitting outside on a cold winter's day, cheering for your favorite group, cheering for your favorite sports team.